Don't overthink it, it's just paint. And welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. In this episode, it's going to be the guide to show you how to strip down old rusted paint down to metal and put a nice layer of epoxy primer on it as you get it ready for a paint job. And a special thanks to the guys over at DC Auto Wholesale Corporation for lending their shop and helping us out once again with our project. Let's go ahead and pull in the vehicle and take a look. And this is exactly what we are dealing with, a rusted out roof. Now the cracking has completely gone down to the metal, and in order for us to make sure that we have a good surface, well, we need to take it down completely to metal. And that's just what we're gonna be doing here. And I'm gonna show you the tools that you need to do something just like this. So to completely strip off all the paint, well, you're gonna need the right tools. Now there's a few different tools we're gonna use. First off, you can start off with the Makita. Now this is a rotary buffer or grinder, I guess you can say. And this works well, except for it's a little bit heavy, a little bit harder to control. But we will be using this because we have 3 people today. Now, the grinder or rotary sander that I prefer is this one right here. It's a Dewalt, and it's super, super light compared to the rotary. It's very easy to maneuver, has a handle here as well. So the way that you're gonna need to buy this is you're gonna buy the Dewalt sander as is, but you're gonna need to add the backing plate. And since we have an extra person here, I just picked up another one because we're gonna be using this a lot on the truck. And we'll go ahead and show you exactly what you need to do. This is a tool that's really gonna help you and save you a lot of time when it comes to sanding. And this is in or around 90 bucks. It comes with a 4-inch backing plate. We're not gonna use this because we're gonna be using the 6-inch paper. So basically this is a tool that you'll get, and then it comes with like a spanner wrench to tighten it up. And then it also comes with the little handle. So basically what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be fixing up this backing plate, which is a hook it for our sandpaper. And what hook it means, or hook and loop, is pretty much Velcro. We're gonna be using Eagle Abrasives paper today, and it just will stick on just like that. Okay, you can see that that's exactly what we need. So to do this, it's very simple. I'll put this in the description as well so you guys know exactly which parts to get. So we'll just spin it on right here, and then we'll use our spanner wrench, and then we can tighten her up. And we are good to go with this one. So the paper we're gonna be using is the Eagle Abrasives. Now, I like to start with 80. I don't wanna go any coarser than that because we can really dig into the metal. And granted, yeah, if we go a little bit coarser, it will cut faster, but this paper is designed to cut at a much faster speed, meaning it will sand at the coarseness of a 60, but leave it 80 grit or higher. Sand scratch is exactly what we want. So we'll start off by getting it completely stripped. I'm gonna show you a little area on the roof right now and how it's done, and then we'll get to work with completely stripping the rest of the roof. Now, do you need to strip your roof completely or your paint? No. What I want you to do is take a look at the surface of the paint right here. And if you take a look at the surface of the paint, it's completely cracked. And those cracks go down into the metal. When they go down into the metal, well, if you put any paint on top of that, it's just going to do the same thing over time. It's gonna start cracking. So on this particular panel, it needs to go down to the substrate, and the original substrate was the metal itself. I'm gonna show you a little test area and show you how to do it. So basically we're gonna do a test area here. Now Jeremy went around and he taped up all the areas we don't wanna strip just yet. And if we look over in this area, you can see the cracking of the paint, right? And I'm gonna show you right now what happens when we sand down this area, why we need to go down to metal. So basically we have the clear coat, which is gone, the base coat, and the primer. And the cracking has come all the way from the underneath coat, which is the primer, which is the first coat that covers the metal. And that is the coat that we need to completely get down to. So make sure that you're wearing a respirator because this stuff is very toxic and you don't want this going in your lungs. Also try to cover up as much as possible. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. So if we come closer, we can see that we actually have a few layers of paint. This hasn't been painted just once, okay? So we have a clear coat, we have a base coat, we have a primer, and then again we have a clear coat, we have a base coat, the original paint right here. So this whole roof has been painted twice over, and in order to completely get it down to a surface where we can paint over it again, we gotta go down the metal. So we got 3 guys here, let's go to work. We just finished with the 80 grit. Now the guys right now, we're using a 180 grit. Now the importance of a 180 grit is to really refinish that and refine that metal just a little bit for the epoxy, so we're not putting epoxy into such a hard scratch. So we're gonna be using right here the Eagle Abrasives 180 grit, and that is what it looks like right here. We're gonna be using also the interface pad, and the guys are doing that right now. It's coming out really, really good. Let me have you take a look at what we got going on. So basically, we're just finishing off the roof. Any of the areas that still might have a little bit of sanding need to do, they're gonna finish that off with the 180. I got a really nice surface to it, and what we're talking about right here is anything like this or anything like there, we'll finish that off with 180 and smooth it out. But man, it's coming out really good. So let's finish this up. Well, we just finished getting it all sanded down with 180. If you come up here and take a look at it, the surface is really, really good. Now, in some areas over here, the rust had really penetrated really deeply, so we had to go into 40 grit to really get that down, and it's looking pretty good. Now, over in this area, you can use a wire wheel. We didn't have one, but we were lucky because the sander really got into all those edges. And we got to the point where like, hey, we got like 80% of it off. We need to get it all off. I mean, it's hard to leave anything. This was a big concern of us, our big concern, because we're like, oh, maybe we'll just put Rhino liner on it, but we want to do it right. And I think we're not going to hold back on this project. We're going to do as much as we can to really restore it and make it look good. So at this point, we'll get it all blown off, and then we're going to take it into the booth. We'll do a wash down or a solvent cleaning. And then from there, we'll go ahead and I'll show you about epoxy, which epoxy we're going to use. So let's get started. All right, so the car is in the booth, and we're going to be putting down an epoxy. Now I'm going to mix it up a little bit different. I'm going to use it as a sealer. We're not doing any body work here. We don't need to use it as sort of any sort of build. We just want to pretty much protect the metal, and when it comes time to paint this down the road, all we'll have to do is give it a scuff up and maybe put one more coat of sealer down. So we'll taper up and then we'll get spraying. We have it all in the booth and we are ready to start doing our epoxy. Now we need to give it a good wipe down, and we're using this product by Eastwood. It's a pre-painting prep, and pretty much we'll use a rag. And the way that we're gonna do it is I like to saturate the rag first, okay? And then we'll take the rag, we'll wipe it down. Then we'll come with another rag and give it a good dry off, all right? So you have two rags. You have your cleaning rag and then you have your wiping rag. Now you can also just do the surface like that, that's fine. And you could just take the one rag and clean it off. It doesn't really make a big deal, but you wanna make sure that the surface is nice and clean. That's what it's gonna pick up. Now we're ready to start the epoxy on our roof. Now you need to use an epoxy because an epoxy is going to be a direct metal. It's gonna protect that metal. Now, some of you might think you can use a regular primer and it's gonna prevent the rust, but you need to use an epoxy. A self-etch also works, but this is much stronger. It's gonna give us the build that we want. Now I'm gonna mix it up just a little bit different because it's the roof. There's no body work gonna be done to it. We're pretty much gonna scuff it up and paint over it once we're ready for the painting process. Now, from here, what we have is Eastwood. Now, Eastwood's been awesome. They're sponsoring all the paint products and most of the products that we need. It's a one-stop shop for anything that we're going to be doing on our build. Also, a special thanks to Abrasives for coming through with the sandpaper. So the two companies are really helping us out to bring to you some great content. So along with our epoxy, we also have our two Eastwood guns. Now they have the P500, which is over here, and then they have the CC500, which is over here. So basically, you're going to need a primer gun and a base and clear coat gun, and that's just what we have for our projects. Now, let me show you how to mix this up, and then we'll start the spraying. For these two, this mixes up 1-to-1. That means for one part of this, it's going to be one part of this, so they're equal parts. So on here, if we look at our cup, right, we want to use the max amount. So what we'll do is we can go up to, let's say, 26. So we'll do 13 ounces of the one part, and then 13 ounces, make it up to 26 right there. So if you don't want to make a big mess, you can get a smaller cup and you can dump it in here and go ahead and fill it up to that first part, which is going to be our 13 ounces. So this one is at 13. That will be the first part of the one component. And this is the activator. This is what's going to make it dry. If we don't put this in here, it's never going to dry. So we'll take this up to the 26 component. And then since we're going to be using it more as a sealer instead of a primer, then we're going to add some reducer, which is going to be 20% of it. Now, if we wanted to sand it down because it had a lot of, let's say, body work, then what we would do is just leave it like that. Now, this is going to be 20%, so 20% is going to take us all the way up to the top. And what is the reducer going to do? Basically, it's going to thin it out. It's going to make it lay down smoother, but it's not going to give you that build, but it's still going to give you the same protection to protect that metal. And that's exactly what we want moving on to the next stage. From there, we'll give it a good stir. Now that we have our primer mixed up, our epoxy primer, it's so important to have a primer gun. You don't want to mix the two together, especially because this is going to come with a bigger fluid tip. We'll use a 1.8 on this. It comes with a couple different types as well. So in the package, what you'll get is the air regulator, everything you need, the air regulator, okay? You'll get the kit that you'll have here. It has a 2.0 in here. If you're going to use the different adapter system, that's in there as well. And then your cup, you'll have your cup in here. And then the actual gun itself, all right, which is the P500, brand spanking new. And now this one will come with a 1.8. So we are ready to start spraying. We're going to put it down. We're going to put 2 coats down. We'll allow for about a good 10 minutes in between coats. All right, so from this point, we're gonna go ahead and unmask this. We'll let this dry in the Florida sun. Now, a lot of you might say, why don't you just use a chemical paint stripper? Well, you can, but since it's the roof, all that paint stripper is going to move down and that can get really messy. I really like using the sanders. I feel like you can see what you're doing. And now the paint strippers nowadays are not as aggressive. So keep that in mind as well. I hope you learned something from the channel, and we're gonna have a lot more work on this project. Guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it, it's just paint. I'll see you guys on the next one.